Apple is one of the most valuable companies ever, worth over 3 trillion US dollars. It's safe to say it's dominating the playing field, ranging from payment processors to consumer products and so much more. Apple is everywhere. But what about its founder? Steve Jobs, a man who went from having no family to single-handedly changing the entire world, working his way up just to be removed from his own company, and getting back up to make billions and change millions of lives, getting cancer, ultimately dying at only 56 years of age. Overall, Steve Jobs was a man with a very creative mind and will always be remembered. So here is the sad yet inspiring true story of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was born in 1955 in San Francisco to Joanne Schiebel and Abdul Fattah Jandali, a graduate student couple who were unable to raise him at the time. Instead of a loving family, he was put up for adoption shortly after his birth. Luckily, he was almost immediately adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, who lived in Mountain View, California. His new parents showed him love, and he experienced a sort of normal life with his new family. See, Jobs was a very curious and creative child. His adoptive father taught him how to work with electronics at only 10 years old, which sparked his interest in technology even further. When he was in high school, he met a guy named Steve Wozniak, who was also an engineering prodigy. Soon, Steve and Wozniak were best friends, and together they would get to college. But after only one semester, Jobs dropped out, saying, "It's just not for me." A few years passed, and by 1976, Jobs was 21 and felt ready to change the world. But first, he needed some help, and who better to ask than his best friend at the time, Steve Wozniak. At first, they were working in Jobs' family garage in Los Altos, along with Ronald Wayne, who initially held a 10% stake in the company. With that aside, Jobs knew that he had a passion for marketing as well as visionary ideas, so he came up with the idea of personal computers, thinking it would strike it big. Wozniak also recognized the potential, and as the technical mastermind, he started working on the prototype of what would soon be Apple's first product. The trio initially aimed to create a computer that could be sold as a pre-assembled unit, a much better option than the kits available at the time, and before starting to sell, they named the company Apple Computer Inc. Apple's first product, the Apple I, was launched in 1976. Wozniak designed the Apple I as a single-board computer, which gave it an edge over other computers at the time. Priced at $666, the computer was initially sold to a computer shop where Jobs somehow convinced the owner to buy over 50 units. But there was a massive problem. They didn't have enough money to make 50 units, so they started selling their personal belongings. Jobs even sold his famous Volkswagen van, and Wozniak sold an HP calculator. The Apple I was relatively simple by today's standards, with no keyboard, monitor, or case, requiring users to supply their own components. However, it made waves as one of the first computers to come with a fully assembled motherboard, signaling a shift toward user-friendly technology. Still, things remained slow. Then in 1977, Apple launched the Apple II, which was a major improvement over the Apple I. The Apple II, designed largely by Wozniak, was among the first highly successful mass-produced personal computers. Jobs took an active role in its design and marketing, recognizing the importance of a consumer-friendly design. Unlike the Apple I, the Apple II came with a plastic casing and was the first computer to feature color graphics, making it far more appealing to the average user. Unsurprisingly, it quickly blew up, generating massive sales and saving the company. A few years later, Jobs introduced the Macintosh, a computer with a graphical user interface, GUI, which was mind-blowing at the time. Jobs was so confident it would make money, but surprisingly, it didn't. The failure of the Macintosh hit Steve Jobs hard. His overconfidence and intense personality began clashing with Apple's board and executives, and by 1985, Jobs found himself ousted from the very company he had founded. It was a crushing blow, but Jobs didn't give up. Instead, he took the opportunity to start over. Not one to sit idle, Jobs founded a new company called Next Incorporated. This new venture was aimed at creating high-performance computers for education and business markets. Next computers were sleek and advanced, but they were also too expensive, and the company struggled to gain traction. Meanwhile, Jobs had another trick up his sleeve. He bought Pixar, a small animation studio from filmmaker George Lucas in 1986. Jobs had no way of knowing it at the time, but this move would become one of the smartest decisions of his life. Pixar's breakthrough came in 1995 with the release of Toy Story, the first ever fully computer-animated film. The movie was a massive success, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars and cementing Pixar as a powerhouse in the animation industry. Steve Jobs' investment paid off big time, and he became a billionaire practically overnight. But that wasn't the end of the story with Apple. By the mid-1990s, the company was struggling without Jobs' vision and leadership. In a twist of fate, Apple bought Next in 1997 for $429 million, bringing Jobs back to the company he had once been forced out of. This time, Jobs was ready to make Apple great again. When he returned, Jobs wasted no time in turning things around. He streamlined Apple's product line, cutting out unnecessary products and focusing on innovation. Then came the big guns. Under his leadership, Apple introduced game-changing products like the iMac in 1998, followed by the iPod in 2001, the iPhone in 2007, and the iPad in 2010. Of course, the road wasn't all smooth. Jobs was known for his demanding leadership style, which earned him a reputation as a genius but also as a tyrant. But behind all this success, Jobs was fighting a private battle. In 2003, he was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. For years, he tried to manage his illness with alternative treatments and minimal medical intervention, a decision that many criticized. By 2009, his health began to deteriorate visibly, and he eventually underwent a liver transplant. Still, Jobs remained committed to his work, even as his body grew weaker. In August 2011, Jobs resigned as Apple's CEO, handing the reins to Tim Cook. Just 2 months later, on October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56.